Good morning and welcome to Get Enlightened with me, Lauren Scott. I'm so excited to have Ruth Tate from the Astrology Roadshow here again. Hey, Rachel.
Hey, it is such a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. I know the listeners are too. You are always a pleasure, and they are wondering what's going to be happening with the last few months of 2024. So before we get started, let's go ahead and shout out your socials again so anybody can follow you, or if they want a astrology reading done by you, how can they reach you?
I am at Rachel Ruth Tate, literally everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, website, rachelruthtate.com. If you Google Rachel Ruth Tate, it is me.
And, of course, I will have her linked on the bottom of here before. Okay, so let's get started, sister. What do we have to look forward to?
Well, you and we're meeting up at the very end of August. And so we're at this perfect point to kind of pick up with everything we left off with the last time that I talked to you. And probably as listeners are finding us right now, we have just gone through some pretty hefty astrology. Some of the toughest stuff that I would say we've gone through for 2024. We had this wild full moon in Aquarius that had us kind of pinched in a T-square with a Mercury retrograde. Jupiter is squaring Saturn. We had Jupiter just conjoin Mars. Like, there's been a lot going on. And there's been this emphasis on the mutable signs and some disruption to the fixed signs. Translation, lots of change. And change isn't something that we humans do willingly all the time. So I'm guessing a lot of us have been thrust into or forced into some major change. And as you and I are talking right now, we are literally a couple of days away from Mercury stationing direct at 21 degrees of Leo. That happens on August 28th. And that's the beginning of a little bit of relief for us.
Nice.
Mercury retrogrades are always hard, right? Because communication issues of travel, not signing deals, commerce not kind of transpiring as regularly. There are some holdups with all things Mercury related. And once that station happens, it's going to free us up. Mercury, to be clear, retrogrades 3 to 4 times a year. So this isn't that crazy. It was just super involved with the last full moon. And it's kind of featuring in a lot of the transformational astrology of the second half of this year. So it's probably more important for us, this sort of communication shift that we're experiencing now, than any of the other Mercury retrogrades this year. So that's soon to be clear. And then the day after that happens, we have Venus entering Libra, which is one of her favorite places. So 2 major upgrades that happen in just a couple of days. And I think that will have us feeling ourselves for sure.
Nice. I'm ready for this, I'm ready for this.
And if listeners have planets or points between about 20 and 22 degrees of the fixed signs, and that would be Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, they might feel this Mercury shift more so than others. So it might be some major forward motion on things you've been working on, even since the very, kind of middle of July.
Yeah.
This is definitely stuff we've been thinking about, wanting to make some moves on. And with that Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Mercury sign, we were like, but I just want to go forward. And there's been a sort of a no, not so fast thing going on. And so we're going to be able to move forward, and with that Venus and Libra upgrade, with a little bit of grace.
Nice.
A little bit of grace. But we will need that good head on our shoulders, Mercury, and that hopeful heart in our chests, Venus, because we are soon to have Pluto, the last outer planet, that kind of generational planet, which takes about 250 years to go around the sun. It will re-enter Capricorn on September 1st. So just boom, boom, boom. On September 1st, we get that re-entry of Pluto to Capricorn.
Yeah.
where it will be until late November, until November 19th. So translation for everybody, just like if you've got a little chart, find your chart, look at what house Capricorn is for you, and know that that place in life has been undergoing major renovations, transformation, think like Phoenix type stuff, since 2008. And this is the last time within anyone's lifetime that Pluto will be there. So there's a little bit more work to do in that area. And this is
Okay.
our chance to do it.
Yeah.
It can be helpful to know though, because say Pluto is in Capricorn there in your fourth house of home and family. A surprise move isn't out of the question.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? This is the very last little bit of those major endings and beginnings in this area of our charts. So check out where it is for you and just be sure that nothing's going to remain the same in that part of your chart. There's a little, especially the very last degree there, if you have anything at 29 degrees of Capricorn in your chart,
Mm-hmm.
it's coming for you. It's coming for you right there and right now. You've probably been feeling it for the last couple of years as Pluto has gone in and out and in and out
Yeah.
of Capricorn and Aquarius, but it's the last time, which means that there's a finality to it. And there's going to be a wrapping up of every loose end and kind of a peeling back of any old dead skin, you could say.
Gotcha.
So
So
prepare for that.
hold on tight for
Yeah.
the final movement.
And if we
Hey.
zoom out a little bit, just to like socially, know
Mm-hmm.
that that is also going to be in effect. It'll be easier to see with the collective, and the American election falls during that time.
Yeah.
So there is going to be some old vestiges of stuff that really are undergoing the last and final transformation. I'm just going to put it out there that in 2008, we had our first African American president. So it seems to me a little bit appropriate that there is an African American female on the ticket this time. And none of us foresaw that
Yeah.
whatsoever the last time I talked to you.
Yes. So do
You were going
you
to say
think,
something.
well, I was just going to say for the people that see these kinds of things on TikTok, this is also the wrapping up of what you said began in 2008, correct?
Yes.
So personally, these signs have been working on this and it's kind of the final hurrah. But politically,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I was going to ask you as well, what you really thought about not only I mean, we're getting to November, of course. I don't want to jump ahead, but
Mm-hmm.
what you just stated, as far as Obama and now Kamala.
Yeah. When we last talked, I remember saying that nobody new is going to be, like, nobody who's not already in power or in politics is going to be the nominee.
Yeah.
There's not going to be any, it's going to be the old, people who have been in power. The thing that's fascinating about this, though, is that Kamala Harris has been in power. She's been our vice president for the last
Mm-hmm.
4 years, but she is somebody who is a little bit different than the other people, right? There's never been a female president. So that's about as different from the previous presidents as one can be while still being a part of the establishment. And
Yeah.
that makes sense to me because by the time the next president is actually inaugurated, Pluto will be in Aquarius.
Hmm.
So there will be major change and, something that is appreciably different from the leadership that we've had over the last several years. I say several, since 2008, since that time. And so initially I was not particularly, clear on who or what might end up as the president, right? Like I wasn't quite sure what was going to go on between the
Yeah.
two previously assumed candidates.
Yes.
But I'm pretty hopeful that we might inaugurate our first female president. And I'm not just saying that wishfully. She's also going through some major transits. She's a Gemini rising,
Mm-hmm.
which indicate a large taking over of responsibility for her. Like, definitely not being less in the limelight than she has been before. Saturn is transiting her 10th house of career and public roles. So if I had to call it right
Oh,
now, I would call it for her for sure.
wow.
Yeah.
Y'all
I'm
heard
not
it?
mad about that.
And I'm not mad about that either. All
Yeah,
right.
it's something of that last little bit of transformation, kind of like I was mentioning. But
Yeah.
we've got some eclipses that are happening as well between September and, when Pluto re-enters Aquarius in November. And it will be our first eclipses in the Pisces Virgo axis. And
Mm.
so that lunar and north node eclipse that's happening at the very end of Pisces in the middle of September, September 17th, that is going to be right in her 10th house of career and public roles,
Wow.
Kamala's. And so I would imagine that there might be some surprises, specifically in the Pisces area of our charts. This is going to be the first time in 9 years that any eclipses have lit up this area. And that's what's going to be on tap for all of 2025. We have the eclipses, the nodes are shifting
Hmm.
into Pisces and Virgo as of January of 25. But even though there's still an Aries and Libra right now, the eclipse is happening close enough to the end of Pisces to still be activated by that North Node in Aries. So I think we're going to be pulled into some emotional collective stuff. And that makes some
Oh.
sense to me, given, the tone and tenor of our presidential election, of all of the stuff that's going on in the Middle East and Europe
Hmm.
and Russia. There's a lot happening that's pretty emotional.
Right. For real, though. So do you think that there is a chance of us going to war, quote unquote?
The United States has its Pluto at the very end of Capricorn. So this September to sort of November period is the last of our Pluto return, which
Hmm.
happens once every 248 years.
Mm.
And so I would imagine that we will get a very good idea between September and November if the United States is going to be a part of this sort of global instability or conflict.
Hmm.
Now, I would venture to guess, because Capricorn is the United States' second house. If you look at the US Sibley chart, where a Sagittarius rising, it's pretty well accepted among astrologers that's a good and useful chart based on the lived experience that we've all had since that Sibley chart was put out there. But that makes Capricorn our second house of earned income, livelihood, and finances. And so I would
Hmm.
imagine that we're going to be more invested in or involved with financial stuff. And I mean, think about 2008. What was
Hmm.
that about? That was all about the big banks and the issues and the, financial system potential collapse question mark at the time.
The housing market collapsed.
So I would say look to this time period for more of that kind of stuff for the United States, and
Mm.
potentially a little bit less of like, hey, let's get involved in some more costly war.
Hmm.
Um, but I do think that there are some signatures, and I'm getting ahead of myself, over the next several years, 2025, 2026, that look a little bit more Civil War-ish
Okay.
than other things. So I would imagine that whatever conflicts exist or continue to exist, the United States is likely to be a financier of those things, much more so than an actual player, and that it will be internal tensions, which are kind of in the spotlight for the next 2 or so years at least.
Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think especially if you're somebody who has a lot of financial interests, just kind of keeping your pulse on that. If you have a diversified portfolio, there might be some things kind of like the housing market, like you mentioned, that's very Capricorn. That's very material. It's very physical. It's very tangible.
Hmm.
Just keeping an eye on those investments and making sure that you catch any downward trend before it really deeply affects you.
Thank you. Thank you for that insight.
And I would spotlight this for November 3rd. November 3rd, middle of the night. So November 2nd, November 3rd, November 4th. But Mars in Cancer will oppose Pluto in Capricorn on that day. And this is a struggle bus transit.
Hmm.
It's like a once in 2 years kind of a transit. And it's going to be especially important because Mars will be opposing Pluto from a place that it will retrograde back over. Mars is doing its once in 2 years retrograde at the end of the year. So
Yeah.
it will be in its shadow when it opposes Pluto. And the next time that it opposes Pluto, it will oppose Pluto having re-entered Aquarius, and will oppose it from just a degree away in Leo. Translation there is that there's going to be some tough stuff that pops up specifically on that Cancer Capricorn axis. I know you're a Cancer rising, so I'm just throwing it in there. And it will kind of reemerge slightly differently across that Leo Aquarius axis. But it might be one of those things like, hey, there's this intransigent issue, and then I have to take several months to work on it, and then I can solve it. And then I can make it happen. But Mars is action, movement, doing, and Pluto is that transformation, that death and rebirth. It's also about our fear and about power. And so this might be, this might be a little bit of powerful oppositions. That's what I'll call it. And of course, November 3rd, right? We're getting right there into election time.
Yeah.
It's just not going to be easy. And of course, it would make sense that there is heightened tension here, at least in the United States around that time. But I would also look at that as an intensification of any geopolitical instability or any conflict right
So
around
stay
that time.
grounded. Stay grounded.
Yes, girl, yes. And know that you might be feeling a lot. There might be a lot of stuff to feel, especially because at that point, we will be just 1 month out from, we will have just experienced the last of the eclipses in Libra. So we have that Pisces eclipse, the first one happening September 17th. And then on October 2nd, we have the last of the Libra eclipses. So it will be wrapping up any of the major changes or disruptions to that sign. And I'm guessing because it's a South Node eclipse, it's in Libra, which is a relational sign ruled by Venus. It's about communication, about fairness, about equity, that we might have a little bit of a disagreement about what is fair, what is equitable. And it's on that same cardinal axis, Capricorn, Cancer, Libra, all cardinal. So there might be a little bit of like, hey, given what I've sacrificed, or given what I've invested, or given, this relationship, I'm expecting results, and I'm maybe a little bit up in arms about what I am or am not getting. And so I would imagine October, November, there's not a whole lot else going on majorly. I think that if I were to kind of offer any advice for Q3 to your listeners, it would be take advantage of September.
Okay.
Because I would just say mid-September is the best astrology that I believe we're going to have for the rest of the year. Get that upgrade in late August, doing our best work through mid-September, and then going into some of these eclipses in, later September, October, and then having that Mars-Pluto opposition in the space where it will retrograde in November. There's going to be a lot of stuff that maybe has just changed. And once something has changed, you kind of get the lay of the land. And then you're like, all right, just moved into the new house. I hate the wallpaper. This furniture looks horrible right over there. Like, we're going to have to fix all of this stuff.
We're just going to have to figure it out. So flow.
Yes.
We're upgrading in September. We're riding that wave through August and September and flowing with it and staying grounded into November.
Yes. And on the same day that we have that Mars-Pluto opposition, we also have a Venus-Jupiter opposition on the same frickin' day, November 3rd. And so that tells me when you see opposition with these major planets, it's like, man, there's going to be so much duality, so much two-sidedness. And I think we all knew that with the election, right? There's going to be like this whole energized part and then this other super energized part. And I think a lot of us are going to feel kind of pulled in two directions or squished in the middle, one of the two. And maybe being caught between our personal desires and our obligations, or what we feel like is actually best for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is that, like, do I just do whatever I want? Like, in my case, do I just like say I'm not going to vote because I'm in Texas and Trump's going to take it and like, fuck it? Or do I actually get out there and, spend this lengthy amount of time I'm sure I'm going to have to spend because it's such a unprecedented election
Yeah.
to actually make that vote, even though I know it might be pointless. That's the
Yeah.
kind of vibe that
Ah,
I'm thinking for that time. And then we get Pluto re-entering Aquarius later in the month on the 19th. And I think it's going to be more familiar territory. We've had Pluto in Aquarius for the majority of this year.
yeah.
And as you and I are talking, Pluto is still in Aquarius. But these themes, specifically at that first degree of Aquarius, that 0 degree, we're going to have more amendments to whatever that is. So if that is your, 10th house of career and public roles, maybe there is a promotion that you get that you're gunning for right now and you're putting those applications in. Or maybe you think you're established and you're like, no, I've got this. And then wait, hold on, I want to be in a completely different industry. And I'm going to have to rethink the way that I identify myself, because this is the beginning of one Pluto cycle. So Pluto hasn't touched anything in Aquarius except for that first degree. And it's getting ready to spend the next 20 years going over the entirety of that sign and kind of making those major transformations and renovations like we experienced in Capricorn since 2008.
Yeah.
And then there's another, you're going to love this, another Mercury retrograde that happens at the end of the year from November 25th to December 15th. But keep in mind that during the election, Mercury will be in its retrograde shadow. So if we take a while counting votes, or if there's a recount or several recounts or whatever, that would be pretty standard. This was the case for our last election as well.
Yeah.
And this Mercury retrograde is in Sagittarius, which is the US's rising sign. So I would imagine that the idea of self-definition, who are we going forward as a
Right.
nation? That's all going to be in question.
So we probably won't know our actual president until December.
Perhaps. I would say that's a worst case scenario, or there might be like several legal battles that go on right after the election, and nothing like that gets resolved
Yeah.
until mid-December. There might be some states that hold out, and you know how that goes.
Yeah.
Might be some manual counting of ballots, like physical ballots, that all could happen. But I also think that we're going to be really feeling with that Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius, the upcoming Mars retrograde, 2 retrogrades. The Mars retrograde starts in December, but we will essentially be feeling this for months beforehand, because Mars retrogrades are long.
Yeah.
They are super long.
How long do they usually last?
The better part of half a year.
Wow.
So Mars won't station direct until February 23rd.
Woo.
It'll be retrograde from December 6th to February 23rd, and it won't clear its shadow until June.
Wow.
So December through June, we are working Mars's work, right, on 2 areas of the chart only, and that will be Cancer and Leo. So wherever those are in your chart, get ready for like the activity to be sort of, and I mean the physical activity, the literal, like what am I doing? Where am I making efforts? What work am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
Those areas of the chart are gonna be major.
Wow.
And I've been telling clients, don't expect this holiday season to be the chillest. It's not going to be chill. There might be a little bit of like people saying they're going to show up for Christmas dinner and then being like, actually, I can't. I've got this other stuff to take care of and I won't be able to do it. Or there might be a like, hey, let's return to rituals that we used to do like back when I was a kid. There might be a little bit of nostalgia in there. There might be a lot of reviewing the way that we do holidays. So just as an example, my paternal grandmother has typically hosted almost every holiday since I've been a kid, that they will be moving into a retirement community this November. And so
Uh-huh.
this holiday season will be really the first holiday season that nobody's gathering at her house. That kind of
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
And I
Hmm.
mean, this is Leo and Cancer. These are the two luminaries. So it might be the change in how we think about holidays, what we want for holidays, even just kind of a redefining of how we express ourselves, like literally express ourselves, because Mars is about our activity, but in Leo and Cancer, it's about how do we make ourselves known?
Yeah.
So there might be a claiming of like, you know what, I've always split the holiday between, my parents' house and his parents' house, but you know what, F it. We're going to go with one this year. We'll go with the other next year. We're tired of doing that driving on Christmas or whatever
Maybe
it is.
the starting of new I just,
Rituals.
yes, thank you. I was like
Yeah,
blanking out. Sorry.
totally
Yes.
new rituals.
Either thinking back about the ones that we liked as a childhood or moving forward with brand new ones.
Yeah, and I'm especially saying that too because one of the most difficult alignments that has happened this fall has been the Jupiter square Saturn, and that just happened. It happened on
Uh,
the 19th of August. I think all of us felt that business right around the full moon. They're on the 19th. Well, both Jupiter and Saturn are doing various different retrogrades. And basically, this square will be exact again on Christmas Eve.
oh.
On Christmas Eve. And instead of being at 17 degrees of Gemini and Pisces, it will be at 14 degrees of Gemini and Pisces.
Uh,
Yeah. And so look for maybe some tension
yeah, I
around
was
that
gonna
time.
say. Okay,
Hmm.
this is all good to know.
And maybe
Although,
some escalations like at large, because Jupiter and Saturn are both social planets. So
yeah,
it might be like your family's traditions, which are getting changed or pinched, but it might be like the world's,
yeah,
the world's stuff, which is getting changed and pinched. And it just makes the holidays a little weird, if that makes sense.
and then going into the new year.
Going into the new year, man, there is a whole lot to be said about the new year. Let me pull up my 2025 calendar because things change.
Do you think it's gonna be an automatic change? Like, one day it's like this, and the next day it's not like, or it's gonna be a gradual change?
It doesn't feel like there's a whole lot gradual about this year.
Well,
So
shit.
Mars will re-enter Cancer on January 6th. And so I would imagine that there are going to be some folks, especially if Donald Trump does not win,
Mm-hmm.
who are a little bit frustrated on January 6th, and they might be emotional
Mm.
about this. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was some major disruptions or some sort of highlighting of that date this coming
Mm-hmm.
year in a
Yeah.
way other than that. But early January, so right after New Year's, so January 2nd, Venus enters Pisces, and that's her favorite place. And essentially after Venus in Libra, which we're about to experience, that is the highest quality Venus. So that's the planet of love, joy, pleasure, money, all these good things which we personally enjoy the benefits of. So it'll be nice, at least, to have Venus in Pisces. We will
Yeah.
have perhaps empathy and more compassion and more peace or more ease than we did. So I
Which
think that
sounds
will be,
which sounds like it's going to be great after all the tough stuff coming around
we might
November.
just be riding the waves, dude. We might have to
Yeah.
just ride the waves. And then Mercury will enter Capricorn on January 8th. So getting out of Sagittarius, where we'll have done that retrograde. We then have a full moon on the 13th. So I'm imagining early January is going to be kind of emo, not in a
Mm.
bad way,
Yeah.
not in a bad way, but a little bit emo. And the astro is a little quieter. I mean, the only big thing is on the 11th, the nodes change and the North Node will enter Pisces, South Node will enter Virgo. So it might be a little bit of like getting lost in the sauce. Pisces is all about the community, that connectivity, that at one mint, like just this kind of Jupiterian flow, that inner realm, that spirituality. And the South Node will be in Virgo. So I would imagine that people are going to be in their fields and it's going to be like, I feel this, fuck the facts, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't care what the data says. I'm going to do what my heart says to do.
Well, that's kind of
That
good
kind of thing.
after having to deal with some powerful oppositions and staying grounded. It's kind of a full circle moment mid
Well,
January.
and then just also know that there will be a Venus retrograde that happens as well. The Venus retrograde will start on March 1st. And Venus does her retrograde kind of like all the Shakespearean photos, all the Shakespearean quotes or the quotes in the Bible, the 40 days and 40 nights.
Mm-hmm.
That's the exact length of a Venus retrograde. And
Oh.
that will take place on March 1st. But that will, like, we didn't have one this year. We didn't have a Venus retrograde. And that will take place in Aries and it will retrograde back to Pisces. So it is kind of nice to have a Venus retrograde that involves one of Venus's favorite signs. But we can expect Venus in either Pisces or Aries for like the first half of next year. Literally the first half of the year.
Nice.
I mean, Venus in Aries is a little bit pop off, like a little bit adrenaline junkie. So I don't know if we're going to love it, but it's not until June 6th that Venus will enter Taurus. So get good with the Aries and Pisces sectors because that's where you're going to find all the cash and prizes.
Get comfortable for a little bit, a little while.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say that is the majority of the important parts of the beginning of next year. It's a little quieter. We're not mad about that.
Yeah, right. Especially with the torrential stuff that's coming. Any election year is always torrential, but then when we look at the stars and what they're saying and where we're going, we just need to all just kind of flow with this for a little bit. Stay grounded and flow. I think that's going to be my new saying up until January. Stay grounded and flow.
Oh, absolutely. And just know too that Venus will be in just two signs for the entirety of the first half of next year. And the same thing is true with Mars. Mars will not leave Leo and enter Virgo until June 17th. So both of those planets doing their retrogrades are putting extra emphasis, Venus-wise on Aries and Pisces, Mars-wise on Cancer and Leo. But these are water signs and fire signs. So all of those people are going to be activated. And that's going to be how we get things done, Mars, and how we, find our joy, are in those spiritual, passionate, kind of vivacious, like what am I putting my life force into? That's the fire signs. And then my feelings, my intuition, my sort of emotionality, that's going to be the water sign stuff. So that's going to be our primary mode for the first half of next year.
Hey, I'm here for it.
Same.
That's a good mode for me. So I'm totally here for all of this. Well, thank you so much, Rachel. Is there anything else that you think that we should be aware of coming up through the new year?
No, I think the only thing I would say is don't sleep on Chiron. Chiron's at the very end of Aries, and so it will be involved in the Venus stuff. It will be involved in, well, it is kind of involved in the Aries Libra axis right now, but it's a healing spot. It just might bring up some wounds. So know that if you're feeling a little bit sore about something, especially over the next 6 months, that is not only natural, but normal and to be expected. And a lot of that sort of Chiron stuff, since it's in Aries where Mars rules and where the sun exalts, it's going to be about where do we put our energy?
Yeah.
Figuring out what's the right place to put our energy.
Ooh, all this change, all this tough stuff and figuring out where we put our energy at. That's tough. Powerful oppositions.
If I could give any advice, it's just being true to oneself, because we are going to love what we love or spend the whole life that we have denying that we love it.
Ooh, beautiful way to end that. Thank you, girl. Thank you. Nailed
Oh,
it.
thank you for having me. It's always a joy to speak with you and to share all of this starry-eyed stuff with your listeners.
Oh, we love having you. Thank you, Rachel. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And we will see you probably right after the first of the new year. We'll get you back on and talk about what to look at moving forward.
Love it, love it, love it.
Love it. Love you. And thanks, everybody, for listening to Get Enlightened with me, Lauren Scott. Bye, Rachel.
Bye.